when we were students, and our
Yeah.
discipline master used to carry a cane around, which is against
Same era.
Yeah, right. And now it's
Same
like
era.
you cannot physically punish students anymore, but
Yeah.
the power has shifted.
Hello everyone, welcome to the Wow Podcast, and we are Unconventional. My name is Raymond.
And I'm Edmund.
Yeah, we are the host for you today. In case it's the first time you're tuning in, this podcast we talk about any topics that's revolving around the current new age workforce and the leaders. So topics like disengagement, work culture, quiet quitting, we cover them in this space.
Exactly.
Yeah, in fact, we are very excited today. We have a special guest for us,
Yeah.
Matthew.
Yay.
Yes.
Hello.
Alright,
Hey,
in
this
case-
is really unconventional, man. I was
Yeah.
seeing all this setup. I'm like, what's this button? What's this?
Ah,
we'll get to that. But let me do a proper intro of Matthew in case
Yep.
you do not know him. So Matthew is a highly sought after life coach. In fact, he's a speaker, MC, and also a personality that is actually recognized in the media space.
Awesome.
And for his work that he's done, he has impacted many lives, especially the younger generation. In
Yep.
fact, today we will cover topics for him to share his thoughts on all this. He's also a thought leader in the education space, so a lot to take from him today, right?
Yep.
So Matthew, why not you give us a introduction of yourself also?
I think you just did a great introduction. Right? But really, my background was in the media. I was quite involved in that space for a bit, and then I shifted to education, and now I do a lot of life coaching, working with the next generation. I think we'll talk a lot about that today, and also working with families, because I think ultimately, in terms of workforce culture, right, it's if they shift towards building a family culture, I think that's a strong foundation to begin with. Otherwise, it's going to be like leaders and employees, then it's that gap.
There's a huge
Yeah.
gap between
Yeah.
them, right? Yeah,
Correct.
Nice,
Right,
nice.
that's right up our alley. So
Yes.
right into the crux of things, right? So
Yeah. Wait. I need to tell him
Yeah,
about
yeah,
this
yeah,
one
yeah,
first.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
you
yeah.
see that there's two tools in front of you, right? One is the Mr. Bobo, and one is Mr. Aha moment.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So basically, Aha boy. So Mr. Bobo is whereby you feel that let's say we talk about a topic that you feel frustrated about, you want to vent your anger, right?
So
or you
the
want
emotions that you want to show, because this is a family friendly show.
Okay.
Yeah. So instead of saying certain words, you can just
to.
go.
What
We
the?
are-
I mean-
It's not conventional, right? So,
Yeah.
That one you might want to use.
Yeah. Of course, if let's say you
about-
have like strong connection, you feel that you learn something, and we connected on certain good points, etc. We
Yeah.
can say we can use the aha
Just-
boy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Aha,
yeah.
boy, I like that. Yeah.
Right.
So that's the set. All right, Emma, what do we have for him? The first question. Let's go.
Yeah, I guess jumping right into it.
Yeah.
Following on your introduction, you talk about your background and all this. So we are great friends actually. Yeah, we are. The reason why we connected with Matt is because we are fans of his work as well. So probably help us by understanding how do you get into this sector, this education use. How do you even jump into this area?
So I think probably about 10 years ago, social media was starting to boom, right?
Yeah.
YouTube, Facebook, then Instagram came into the picture. Now it's TikTok and all that. And it was quite unconventional back then for anyone who
Like
is
the word.
not a blogger to really openly talk about issues, right? Because there's a lot of censorship, there's a lot of red tapes, you might get into trouble legally and things like that. So people
Okay.
are generally safer. So I think previously I just wrote about certain issues that people connected to, but people don't talk about openly. And subsequently, when I left the media space, went into education, things that happen within the classroom with the next generation, I also talked about all these teachable moments, which got me into a lot of trouble, yes, but I guess it started conversations as well.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
That's exactly what we are aiming to do here as well. So we want to bring the unconventional conversations over here. That's why we got Matt onto the show. How about working with the youth? What do you enjoy working with? I'm sure there are certain motivation for you to want to do this in the first place.
You know, you call this aha boy, right? So I guess my biggest motivation is sometimes when they are struggling through certain situations or circumstances, and then like you see this aha moment in their life, and it's very fulfilling. It's something that like I guess most people who work with others, whether it's youths, whether it's any individual, like when you see that light bulb and you
Yeah.
see that spark again in
Okay.
them, right? It's like wow, there's so much meaning in what we do.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's
So
to be
it's
honest,
the
it's
impact that drives you to.
yeah, but it's a constant love-hate relationship, to be very honest. Because sometimes,
that is my next question.
Why?
I guess like I was just talking to Raymond before this podcast,
Yeah.
right? And him being a trainer as well.
Yeah.
And sometimes you have so much heart that you want to give and so much things that you want to do, but the opposite end of the spectrum, right?
It's not ready.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
The person on the receiving end has to be ready.
Alright.
They have to be open to learning. They want to change themselves.
Okay.
Otherwise, it's like you give so much, but then it's not a two-way street, right? Then you are depleted.
Yeah.
And the other party just don't appreciate what you do, and there's no
Okay.
change, there's no transformation.
How do you manage this since you are
Yeah,
this anyway?
yeah.
Yeah. How do you
Um,
manage
yeah.
your
Maybe you
own
can advise me when I go
energy?
through
Yeah.
this.
Yeah, like they call this like the Messiah syndrome, right? Where you like want to save the world kind of
Yeah.
thing. And I guess I used to have that. I thought like I can make impact with everyone. Then I realized not everyone wants to help themselves.
Yes.
And that's where I have to like take a step back.
Okay.
And now I choose to focus on the ones who I can help and who wants to help themselves. I
Okay.
think that's important.
Yeah. So it comes down to the first step. I mean, we have this saying that we because we work with each other quite a bit for some time already. So the student have to be ready, right? Before the teacher can appear. Very apt in your case, right? Yeah. In that sense.
No, you can bring the person to the water. You cannot force
the
them
person to drink, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
This analogy comes out in this
Yeah.
case.
Yeah.
So, but like, I mean, on this topic, because like, I mean, we are leaders ourselves in this case, like, whereby actually when you approach a situation where somebody don't wants to get help, right? Sometimes I will think, should I like increase my capability and my influence to actually make sure that I can help this person? Like, what would you think this way, or do you feel that it's really like you can't control people or you can't influence them to change a person, to like suddenly want to become like help themselves? Have you gone through this phase? Do you blame yourself for that or no?
I think there's so many factors. For example, because I work closely with families and youths, right? And one of the biggest thing that we always aim to understand and then perhaps change is what happens at home, the relationship at home. Because for the youths especially, like for them it's all about relationship with their peers, with their parents, even their boyfriend and girlfriend in future. And if that is like an emotional aspect that is not taken care of or they don't feel safe, then it affects everything else. In Singapore, it's always like grades, but we don't talk about their mental and emotional health. That needs to be taken care of first, and everything else falls into place. And I guess it's the same within the work culture because like if they feel that like, hey, I'm part of a team or part of a workforce, right, that everyone really looks out for each other. We work together towards a certain goal, but we also have leaders who cares about us, not just the numbers all the time, right? And I think it fosters like a very good work culture where they feel that they belong in a family rather than I just go to work for the paycheck and just do the bare minimum, which is quite quitting, right? Yeah.
I mean, I totally can connect. So I will assume your baseline would be, even if you approach a very difficult person or situation, you want to get personal, want to understand the person,
Correct.
etc. and all that. Yeah,
But at the
totally
same time,
align with that.
it's quite exhausting, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes because when you go into the personal connections and all that, and it takes up your time, it takes up your energy, and I guess like I mean back to what we said, it needs to be a mutual thing. Like the person needs to want to help themselves, and then there are things that we can set up, build the support around them so that they know that they can continuously get better, lah. Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things that we can actually learn from that short sharing. So we were asking about how you manage your own energy because I'm sure you're someone who really goes full in.
Yeah.
Yeah. By the sound of it, you want to create that impact. So I guess we've gone through this stage as well. We can't help everybody. Down to the analogy of having a safe environment. So in this podcast, we talk about the challenges between the workforce and the bosses. But I guess in the education sector, right, a very parallel comparison would be between the parents and probably the teachers, right? So
Yeah, very, very touchy conversation.
okay, so who is more? I mean, in your point of view, from your point of view, in your opinion, who is more responsible for the current situation?
I think even before this podcast, I was talking to your producer. And I was like, we were batchmates from secondary school.
Small world, right?
And we were just talking how it was when we were students, and our discipline master used to carry a cane around, which is against
Same era.
Yeah, right. And now it's
Same
like
era.
you cannot physically punish students anymore, but the power has shifted because like educators, teachers no longer have that sense of like authority.
Okay.
Because anything that they say or do, it goes under the scrutiny. The parents' WhatsApp group, they will like send all this misinformation and things like that. And the
Okay.
students, some of the students who, sad to say, are like self-entitled. They know that their parents are powerful. They know their parents can influence certain things.
And hence they
So
make use of the power.
Exactly.
Alright, okay.
Like there was one incident recently that went viral of this boy. I shall not name the school out.
Yeah.
If you know, you know. And then he threatened the teacher and like, I'll end your life or something
yep.
like that. And when they did a bit of like digging, right, then they
Yeah.
realized who this boy's parents were.
Okay.
And I mean, sometimes it's if back to the environment, if they were not
Yeah.
brought up in an environment where certain values were inculcated into them, right, then
Okay.
then they grow up thinking that I'm self-entitled, I can do whatever I want without any consequence. And then teachers, they don't have that power anymore to like, oh, I'm going to cane you, I'm going to punish you. Because if they do that, there are repercussions. Then the
okay.
parents will complain, the schools will have to like,
Okay.
it almost, this will be
It's-
quite a controversial statement, right? But
Alright.
schools are almost like a business now.
Okay.
And then the customers are the parents. And you have to appease your customers.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Kind of sad, man. Very sad.
I mean, it's a little bit reflective in the wider society, right? We do have this cancer culture going on. Like like you say, teachers are under constant scrutiny. So I guess for our audience, for those who are in, I guess position of power. Last time, I guess maybe when we are like boomers, the boss is like the king.
yeah.
Whatever he
Yeah.
say goes. We don't think that is the best way to do things, but right now what we are seeing is that with cancer culture and everything going on, right, seems to be there might be a shift in dynamics as well. We don't know whether this is the best way to do things, but I guess that's why we are here to put all these conversations here to really, really, really bring things up.
Yeah, so that means that what I'm hearing is, I mean, even though I already have like some floating narrative whereby the younger group or workforce now comes in with a lot of expectations and world attitude.
Yeah,
it-
because that's the kind of culture they have in school where like I just do or study what I want. I don't have to show respect to the teachers. And then they go into the workforce thinking like, yeah, I do what I want. Like you give me what I want. So like
Also,
how-
the students feel that the teachers are supposed to serve them. Are you saying that?
correct. So
wow.
for example, like just now you were talking, but to be
Okay.
fair,
Yeah.
it's not all students.
it's not binary.
Yeah. We're not trying to
yeah.
make statement
Correct.
about everybody here.
Correct.
It's just a general trend lah that we're trying to discuss.
So,
here.
for
Yeah.
example, in school, some students will feel like, what can you teach me? Because they have access to the internet, right? So, literally, sometimes when I step into class, and
Yeah.
even some of the better schools, sometimes they'll give you
Okay.
this aloof attitude of like, what can you teach me that I possibly don't already know? And you have to win them over in that sense. And that's why they bring this attitude maybe even to the workforce, right? And they come to an interview, for example, a job interview, it's like, what can your company do for me? Rather than the main crux of it should be what I can contribute and value add to your company, right?
Okay.
So in a sense, the tables have turned. But like, is it? It needs to have the right balance, like
Yes.
you. It cannot be like the power lies in the interviewee. They're going for an interview
Yeah.
for a job, but it's almost as if they are interviewing the bosses rather than convincing the bosses why they should be hired.
Okay.
Yeah.
But when I feel these are more of a in the middle ground, but I want to hear from like Edmund.
Yeah.
Edmund more like when you hear somebody who's like a bit more entitled, they come here, what can you value? Give it to
Yeah.
me. What's your perspective?
Like, the reason why Raymond is pointing this to me is generally in this podcast I'm
Leaders,
representing more of the bosses. You connect with more.
Yeah.
My take is I'm fine because at the end of the day, any interview is maybe a fit process, I would guess. So it goes both ways.
Definitely.
I want to know more about you. You want to know more about me. By asking me that question, it just tells me more about you,
Correct.
and I'll decide from there whether I want to work with you.
Oh.
I just take it as
Okay.
there's no reason. The person is not my guy. Okay,
Yeah.
I choose people very particularly because I take certain commitment when I bring in a person under my wing.
Correct.
So I want to grow the person and I'll make sure the person can integrate with my team. But this just shows me that I might not want to work with this particular person. You get what I
Yeah.
mean? Yeah, I'm sure they are. I'm sure whatever we are discussing today, it will not be representative of the entire population.
Yeah.
There are still like certain good people to be found here and there. Yeah, it's just a general trend, I guess.
But what I think you're
Yeah.
doing is great because like you during the interview process, it's like a screening or profiling process, right? Where
Yes.
you identify is this candidate the right fit for the company to join my team and all that.
Yeah.
And sometimes the youths, they don't realize that because sometimes when I coach them through their scholarship interview or even the early admissions exercise, Poly,
Okay.
they have this early admission
Yeah.
exercise. And it's like, I keep telling them, yes, you have to prove that you deserve to be in that course, but don't come from a place of entitlement of like, oh, the course like should give you that place in their school because it's like, what have you proven at the age of 15, 16? It's your job to convince them, right? Your worth so that they accept you. Not go into a school interview or job interview and are like, what can you do for me? Yeah, because it's like, what have you even proven to
That's really
to
a
make certain
change.
demands?
I can't imagine saying this kind of things right
Yeah.
now. I was
No,
like 15 or 16.
I'm like curious, like, I mean, if I'm a like a teenager, then you telling me that, hey, don't be entitled, go, well, how do they respond to this? Like, do they agree or do they feel
Yeah.
like frustrated
No,
that
they
you're
feel
Who are
attacked,
you to
right?
tell
Yeah,
me
exactly,
that?
exactly, right? They feel like, what do you mean I'm entitled? Well, no, because their reality, their world is everything is handed to them. And sometimes parenting, right? It's at home. Their parents are really successful, and their form of showing love. Can you guess what it is?
gives
gives
Just give you money, just give you games.
reward you.
Correct.
Yeah.
And the main thing that's lacking is that parental influence and being part.
Guidance,
Correct.
okay.
So then this absent parenting really becomes like, oh, then I'll get influence from my friends, I'll get influence from online, then they start to
Okay.
form a certain identity, and
Okay.
that becomes part of who they are. Yeah, so it's quite scary in that sense.
Okay.
But I guess I wouldn't even say it's extreme cases because it's slowly shifting to become
The norm.
yeah, and it's
Oh
more
my.
like you see it more apparently online, but you also see it in person or sometimes
Yeah.
HR. They share these kind of stories, right? And it's the good ones, they will thrive because they know how to carry themselves.
Yeah.
They'll always be hired. And then it's the ones who are in the middle, or those who really give a bad impression, right?
Yeah.
They will, unfortunately, they will
Yeah.
they will learn it the hard way, lah,
I guess you know best because you work with a lot of them, right? So probably to link to that, how do they handle disappointments, failures? Because they are bound to face such challenges, right?
Yeah.
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 Given how they hold themselves, they
Yeah.
carry themselves. So what happened? Let's say they go for an interview.
They get rejected.
They get rejected.
Yeah.
Then what to do? How do they handle it?
I guess it's two things, right? First is what are their own expectations? Because as students in Singapore, it's always like our expectations are we got to score well, we got to
Yeah.
get what we want. You work hard means you get what you want, but we know in life that's not necessarily true.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean we work hard means we'll get what we want.
Yeah.
So then it creates this whole perception or this whole belief that like, oh, if I work hard I will make it, I'll get what I want, and constantly being fed this thought, right? And sometimes the elite schools or the better students, when they fail, they crash very hard because they've never dealt with failure in their life, they've never
Okay.
dealt with rejection in their life,
Okay.
and to them it's like, I failed, I'm worthless, I'm useless, that kind of thing. So it's quite scary in that sense. And then on the other end of the spectrum, right, there are those who constantly don't do well.
Yeah.
So then I get rejected, I fail again. That's just
No
part
big
of
deal.
life. Yeah, no big deal exactly,
Okay.
and they don't push themselves to be better. So there needs to be a balance.
Oh,
lah.
okay.
Yeah.
So they fall on the other side as well. They just
Correct.
give up lah.
Yeah,
In a sense,
yeah,
right?
because
Okay.
because every time they don't do well, then maybe they're told certain things like, are you useless, are you hopeless, lah. I mean, even when I was young, like my mom is Korean, right? So like Korean expectations, Singapore child. So I was constantly like fed this
Okay.
narrative or perception that like you're not good enough. Yeah, but I broke out of it, lah.
Okay.
Yeah, so I guess shifting away from that, it's really like getting the students or individuals to realize like, hey, even though academically you might not be great, what are the other things that might be great about you? Why don't you focus on that? Why don't you build that? And then get whoever's involved in their life, right, to support that as well.
Okay.
Because I guess linking back to the workplace, right?
Yeah.
Because every employee or every staff will have their different strengths,
Yep.
and it's how we can put all these strengths together to really like create the best workforce, our best team possible. Yeah, like Avengers, right? All the heroes have different
Yeah.
strengths.
Yep.
They have
Yeah.
conflicts as well, but
Yeah.
eventually they come together for a common goal.
All right.
Yeah.
Agreed.
So like I have a burning question because like, okay, maybe because we are older, we already form like, oh, these are the best attributes that we need to have as an individual, etc. So for you, like for example, you were going through the coaching them during their, I would still consider them formative years, like maybe teenager.
Yep.
Yeah.
What are the attributes that you consider important to instill at that moment in this case?
I
mean,
think
yeah.
resilience and adaptability, because so through my coaching or sometimes the master classes, right?
Yeah.
Like first I'll get the parents' permission to like, you need to trust me that whatever I'm doing is going to be the best interest of your child. So parents, okay, do whatever you need to do.
Okay.
Then I'll create like, it's very experiential because in school they are very used to like downloading information,
Yep.
and it's very like just learn lecture style, right? But I'll create experiences where they will fail. And through all these failures, all these setbacks, right, then they're more receptive to learn because they realize like, maybe I'm not so good after all. or maybe they
Okay.
realize maybe there are certain things that I lack that I need to be more aware of. So when they go through this experience and they're more self-aware, they're more self-reflective, that's where they're more open to hear suggestions. But even before they try and you say like, no, you should do this, you should do that, this is good for you, they'll just block you off because it's like
okay.
you're just lecturing, you're just nagging.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's why it must be experiential kind of thing.
Yeah.
So,
Alright.
do you work more? Sorry, do you work more with those who are used to doing very well? Hence, you need to design it in a way whereby they need to fail, or do you work more with those who are constantly being told that they are not doing as well, they're useless? Which is the group that you normally work with?
I work with students across the whole spectrum.
whole spectrum,
yeah,
okay.
so the balance that I found was for youths particularly, and maybe it can apply in the workforce also, to use positive peer pressure. Because for youths, right, they are all about like, I want to look good in the eyes of others. I want to be accepted. So then it's to get those who are performing at a high level
Okay.
to raise the standards of those who are not there yet.
Struggling a little bit. Yeah.
Correct,
Okay.
correct. And for those who are performing at a lower level, right, to like, hey, maybe you have other strengths that you could actually like help the ones who are performing at high level. Because very broadly, sometimes those who are performing well academically,
Yeah.
maybe EQ or their social skills, right, is lacking. And then those who are not performing well academically, they're very sociable and they're very
Yeah.
street smart. So
Okay.
then they are like, hey, we can learn things from each other.
Okay.
So when I put them through situations, they realize like they can tap into each other's strengths and how they can leverage on that. Rather than like, oh, I'm a top student, you're a bottom student, there's nothing that we can meet in between to,
Okay.
to work together.
I think that's fantastic.
Oh,
Because
yeah.
these are the exposure that they don't get in school, right? Typically, the top students will hang with the top students and do all the same things, and it's almost like they are in their own bubble, sort
Yeah.
of, right?
And because this means that actually it's like, okay, because in workspace we
Yeah.
also believe in the same like
Yes.
principle that it means like you use a better environment, you reward the behaviors of like being better, good, so that it inspire everyone to take action and uplift.
Yeah.
So my question would be like, wow, actually, but this has to be replicated throughout the whole educational system. Do you think there's a fair chance that we can land there, or even this narrative is not even within the system? Is it?
But it all links, right? Because whatever happens in the classroom, them as youths, eventually they go into the workforce.
Yep.
And two examples is one, a kid who's very introverted, and in their school life, the entire school life, they're not encouraged to speak up. They're not given a voice to be heard. Then when they enter the workforce, it's always like they get spoken over. They're not really like accepted. People might just like ignore them, whatever. And it's very sad because a lot of them, they are very capable, but
Yeah.
because they're introverted, they don't know how to speak up. A lot of opportunities get swept by, right? And then also talking about toxic culture just now, if let's say they grew up in those kind of popular cliques and always like bitching about people and all that, then the self-entitled attitude go into the workforce, then they fester this very toxic culture where they like bitch about their colleagues and all these things, right? Then it all starts from how they were raised when they were kids or
Yeah.
teenagers. Yeah, so it carries on. Yeah.
Okay.
But again, it doesn't apply to everyone,
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
So because some kids are really like they were brought up well. They have respect. They know how to be grateful. They know how to present themselves or behave in certain situations. But some are just like they think the world revolves around them lah. And it's like sometimes they need a reality check.
Okay.
As much as my role as a coach is to guide them and be as supportive as possible, right?
Okay.
Sometimes I think they really need to be like given a hard knock in life to wake
Okay.
up to how the world really operates.
So that's part of the solution lah. Why I ask that question is also, it's less of to say yes or no to that question. It's more of, if it is, what can we do about it? If it's not, how do we keep it that way? I guess that it's always about moving forward,
Yeah.
having progress, right? Rather
Yeah.
than being stuck to that situation.
Which I guess
Yeah.
is it's exactly like this podcast, right? Is to have open conversations because I guess last time in the workforce it's very top down. It's like the boss
Yeah.
says this,
Yep.
everyone else does this. And actually in Korean Japanese culture it's still very much like this.
Okay.
It's you don't argue.
Especially in the Asian culture.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Know your hierarchy, know your
Yeah.
place, right?
Yeah.
But because now they are more the woke generation, so they get a lot of American influence and all that.
Okay.
So that's not necessarily a bad thing.
Okay.
But I guess maybe leaders should be more open to having these kind of discussions. And it's
Yeah.
not just having discussions for the sake of it, but will you take their feedback and put certain things into place? Yeah. So it's almost like a negotiation, right? It's like I'm hearing you, I'm doing something about it. Like you need to meet me in the middle as well. Yeah. Then that's where like the younger employees will feel that my voice is heard. I have leaders who care about me. I want to be part of this company,
Yep.
rather than like, oh, I'm just working for the money and
Yeah.
full stop. Yeah.
Okay. I guess there's a constant struggle. You mentioned it also just now. So for the youth, right, they need to have a safe environment, especially in the school, at home, before they can thrive to do better for themselves. And from their point of view, their measurement of doing better is generally getting good grades, doing better in school. So there's this constant struggle between, should we work towards having a safer environment or having better grades? And this translates actually to the workplace, because when we work with companies, right, there's this constant struggle of, I need to get my top line number. I need to drive the company results.
Yeah.
Why are you telling me to build a safe environment? That's not the purpose of a company. We see otherwise, definitely, because I see some parallels over here. How do you balance this? Maybe first and foremost in the youth arena, then maybe we can talk about how we can translate this over to the workplace and the environment.
So I think like in my work with youth, so I have this group of youths, about 15 of them, and they're all from different schools, all from different backgrounds. And I guess what I said just now is putting all of them together and just being very open about what they're struggling with, what are their own personal aspirations. So I get them to commit to it, so they understand that these are their struggles or challenges, and getting the rest of them like, how can we support you, but also holding them accountable to it. So talking about numbers, right? So we don't talk about like, oh, you should get A1s and things like that. Like, this is a goal you commit to.
Okay.
We're going to hold you accountable to it. We're going to support you. But then at the end of a certain time frame, if you don't achieve this, what you said you want to achieve, like why? And then we break it down. And then we try to like see how we can turn that situation around. Because I think that you're asking within the workplace, right? It's to have that open conversation of like, look, this is our objective. These are like the bottom line or the numbers that we need to hit. But what are some of the challenges that you're facing?
Okay.
Because I guess for some people, sometimes if in the sales line and all that, right, it's like we need to hit the numbers. And yes, the team knows we need to hit the numbers. But then if they don't feel that they are supported, whether it's emotionally or whether it's the tangible strategies and all that, right? Then their question is, but I don't know how to do it, and I'm not supported. And then it's constantly this pressure of like, I need to hit the numbers. Then it will lead them to like feeling so frustrated. I don't know how to do it. I feel so much pressure. I'm just going to quit. Yeah.
I guess that's step one. So I think what you shared just now is actually step two, which is you have merged how to create a safe environment by checking back with them to see what. Maybe we wouldn't assume that they know why we need to hit certain numbers. Explain it to them. Second step, help them find out their problems. Be there for them. Maybe sometimes they just need to know that their boss is there for them.
Yeah.
They don't really need you to solve their problems for them.
Yeah.
But once you created that safe environment actually translates to better result. And that's how we actually merge these two things together. So I guess maybe the burning question that I have is, so for the group of youths that you put them together, some with good grades, some with not so good grades, how was the average outcome for everybody subsequently?
So they all strive to be better because I mean, there is that peer pressure of like, we will be assessed. We have to be accountable. So one is they want to look. Everyone wants to look good, lah. We don't want to look like any less in the eyes of others, right? So they will push themselves to be better. But it also forms very healthy friendships because it's not just a toxic culture of like, all the ones who are underperforming will group up together. Those who are performing will group up together. It becomes like, we're openly sharing about our struggles, our challenges, how we can support each other. The ones who are doing well, raise up the levels of those who are underperforming. The ones who maybe are struggling, you need to reach out to those who may be able to help you. So I think if it creates that kind of culture, right, where ultimately it's like forming almost a family unit, right, where everyone supports each other.
So the overall standards of everyone actually
Correct.
get raised up.
And actually this feeling of like, I'm part of something great, I guess a lot of employees, I don't know if they did surveys and all that, but speaking to a few of my friends, right, when I ask them like, hey, you're so miserable at your job or angry with your bosses, like, why are you still there? You know what's their number one reason that they always say?
What?
My colleagues. I like my bond with my colleagues. So actually, if you develop that culture within the team, right, and then whether you're a high performing team or whatever your company culture, if you as a leader you continue to build that, it's actually very powerful.
So they don't like the leaders, they don't like the company, but they love working with their colleagues.
Yeah.
And that's a motivation for them to stay there.
Yeah.
Wow.
Which I mean could be good or bad, but yeah.
Okay.
So I have a curious question, like because for you to land where you are to have the conclusion, which we fully align. Environment, growth. How do you land that? Do you went through some experience, or who or how have you shaped this mentality that hey, this is crucial?
Yeah.
I'm sure like there must be a lot of past experience for you to.
Yeah, I
get
guess
paid.
I guess it's through different life stages, right? Because previously I was in the media industry, and media industry, do you know what's the benchmark of your success? Like how people will put or value your worth. Do you know what's the common like denominator?
Sounds like the number of followers you have.
How popular you
Oh, really?
are,
Yeah.
how
Oh,
many
my.
fans you
Correct,
have.
correct.
Okay,
It's like the
okay.
more number of followers you have, right? The more your
man.
value lah. So
Okay,
to
that's
speak.
like your grade lah in the media industry.
Yeah,
right,
it's very
so to speak.
superficial, right? But that's how it is, and
Alright.
that made me think like, but if someone is so talented or they have a lot to offer, but they're not exactly the most popular, then you're just gonna dismiss them like that. Versus someone who could have a lot of followers, but like they don't really have much substance, and you keep pushing them to
Get
to
more
get
exposure,
more exposure
yeah.
and whatnot, right? Then it's not very fair. Like that was
Okay.
one of my first experience.
Okay.
And then shifting towards the education space, then it's always you see like in a primary school level, they divide the students high ability, mid ability, low ability, right? And then it for 6 years it creates a culture as like, oh, I'm a top student, oh, I'm a average student, oh, I'm a lousy student, that kind of thing. So
Okay.
then I think it needs to balance out, law. Yeah.
Okay.
And that's why I always feel that every one of us, we have things that are unique about us. We just need to build that. Yeah.
Okay. Not familiar with the media space, but I guess in the schools, in the situation is as it is, right? How do we improve on that situation? How do we get the teachers and the students
Yeah.
and the parents to be on the same page to actually, I don't know, trash things out, work?
Have a best chance to create the best environment for the
Yeah.
kids, right? Yeah.
I mean, I don't think we can depend on the ministry to settle everything. I think we have a responsibility as parents, as Singaporeans to try to improve on things. So what do you think we can do about the situation?
Send them to my masterclass.
yeah.
Coach.
I have already keep that in mind. Like,
Media
oh,
train and education.
I'm gonna send my kids, let her have a taste of failure there.
What's
Yeah.
the youngest age that you take it?
But I think really on MOE is shifting. I think MOE is shifting towards. But I just had a conversation with a parent, which was quite interesting because the
Okay.
whole MOE culture is shifting towards taking care of a student's mental and emotional well-being, right? Which is great.
Okay.
But this conversation I had with a parent recently, she said, but when my child doesn't do well for their test, the response from the teachers involved are like, oh, it's okay, you did your best. And the parent felt like, but he can be pushed more. Like it's
okay.
not his best.
Okay.
But the whole conversation right now is okay, it's okay, you did your best.
Okay.
So again, there needs to be a balance because
Was this a tiger mom? Oh no, it's just a.
she self-proclaimed she's a tiger mom, but like I mean, knowing the son also personally,
Yeah.
like he is capable of so much more. So it's
Okay.
it's really
So
striking.
it's a fair feedback lah.
Exactly.
For
Yeah.
I guess it's different strokes for different folks, right?
Yeah, correct.
Probably the first step is to assess the capability of that kid.
Yeah.
Whether he
Yeah.
can be pushed more or not lah.
Yeah.
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 So
Which is why also I think maybe like we always have appraisals in the workplace and all that, and
Yeah.
and it's I guess maybe for leaders it's sometimes it's yes, the bottom line is the results that you deliver and all that, right?
Mm-hmm.
But what are the other strengths that the individual have that
Okay.
that we can like focus on, that we can maybe even sometimes give them options, right? Like what do you want to, how do you want to contribute to the company based
okay.
on what you have. So when we leave that conversation open for them to perhaps share how they can contribute, right? Then it creates like a two-way street lah. Yeah. So it's not like, oh, you're underperforming, you're not delivering the numbers, you're useless to the company, like do well or get out, that kind of thing.
So for that particular conversation, right? Can this happen between the teachers and the students as well?
That's what I do with my students actually. Like
Okay.
because I'll ask like, so what do you want? Not what your parents want, not what the school or society wants, what do you want
Okay.
for yourself? Then I'm like, okay, let's give you a time frame, work towards that. If you do well or you struggle, then like let me know, let the rest of us know how we can support you, how we can help you. Because the only thing I'll need from them is the commitment. It's like, hey, if you say this is not my words, it's your words, you want to achieve this.
Okay.
So that's the commitment and the autonomy, right? But if you struggle in between, then we have to step in lah. Then we have to like help you to navigate
Okay.
back to where you're supposed to be.
Yeah.
I mean, since we're on this, like, because we want to talk about the portion on strengths.
Yeah.
I because for him himself, he actually has went through this tool before. Can I use it? But so like, any recollections of how you have used this tool on Strengths Finder, and this is Clifton Strengths, and we want to talk a little bit about that, and then maybe deep dive one or two talent teams that have impacted your own life.
Maybe you
in
can
this
share
case.
with us your top talent teams
Ah,
first.
okay.
Do you remember?
Very fun.
Let me do that. My job. Ideation, relator, developer, maximizer, and activator.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, like 60-70%.
Yeah,
Same
yeah.
with me.
That's why.
Let's just having this conversation with Raymond that
Yeah.
there are a lot of profiling tools, right? Whether it's
Yes.
Tetra, DISC, whether
Yeah.
it's Anagram and all
yeah,
that.
yeah.
And I think it's really important for individuals or even companies to have a profiling tool because maybe even during the onboarding phase, right, when you're doing the first interview, it's like what kind of profile they are. It's not cast in stone because
Yeah.
we're constantly changing, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But it gives the company and the individual an idea of like, oh, this might be my best fit. This is how I can best contribute. These are my strengths and all that.
Okay.
Because even for students or even as adults, the very first time I did it, I was fascinated by it. I'm like, oh yeah, it's so accurate. It's almost like horoscope, right?
Yeah. Or fortune telling.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah, correct. And then you understand yourself better. I think that's the
Okay.
first level.
Yeah.
The second level is you
Self-awareness.
understand others better.
Okay.
And then that's how you sort of adapt to different situations based on how you know different people are. Yeah, so I think it's quite crucial for companies to really have a certain profiling tool, right? For the bosses or the company to understand the employee and also the employee to understand themselves and also the people around them.
Yeah, I just want to add on this because like really resonates. Like over the years, because we've been doing like coaching even within our own business and externally, I think it's so important, especially now that it's so diverse. You have different people, different nationalities coming in. It's so important to you have because actually all tools are great.
Yeah.
It's just that the tool must have traction so that
Correct.
you use it as a common language. Everybody have a I don't know. I always like to say a neutral and scientific way of looking at each other. There's nothing personal. This is who you are, etc. Okay, then how do we solve conflicts? How do we build trust? And then there's a good chance for them to progress as a team from here.
Yeah.
So especially if you know your strengths, hey, why not you do this for me? I support the other way. I think it creates a sense
That's
of
really
belonging.
the ideal state. A lot of people, like you say, there are a lot of profiling tools, and it's usually amazing. Any profiling tool is amazing because the
Yeah.
first time you look at it, it's like wow,
Yeah.
So
but
accurate.
A lot of companies and a lot of organizations don't move on beyond that.
Yeah.
So the wow, 2 weeks later, everything goes back to
Yeah.
the same. Yeah. But how do you continuously use it in your day to day, understand
Yeah.
each other as a communication tool? I guess that's really the difference.
But I guess that's where you guys come in, right? Because like one thing that I was talking to Raymond about is sometimes people get very fixated by the fact that I'm this type, and it's very convenient to. So for example, even Strengths Finder,
Yeah.
and you're like, this person is this type, or
Yeah.
I'm
So you
this
start to
type.
label.
Yeah.
Correct, correct.
Yeah.
Or you just like, then I cannot change up because I'm like that. No, but no, it's just understand this is you.
Yep.
But how you can like work things better.
Have a growth mindset instead of a fixed mindset.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
important. Yeah, definitely. Agree. So, which talent team that you resonate the most or you have been like, you connected with it strongly over the years or you have used it?
I guess ideation. Is it like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? Is it ranked according
It doesn't
to
matter.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. Because
yeah.
like your top 5 or 10, they're all
out there
dominant
lah.
talents.
Yeah,
1 and
yeah.
7, 1 and 8, no much difference
Yeah.
in this case. Yeah, all dominant
Two
talents.
under influence and two
Yep.
under
Two influence, 2 relationship building, and 1 strategic thinking.
yeah.
So ideation,
Ideation is, I mean, all three of
Edmund
us,
has it
yeah.
also,
Yeah,
actually,
yeah, we're
top 10.
constantly
Yeah.
coming
Yeah.
up with ideas and things like that, right?
Yeah.
So I guess it comes to play very naturally, and just constantly thinking of what's the next idea, what's the next thing we can do better and all that lah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's why you all do like very creative activities for the kids, right, in your master class.
Yeah, yeah, and it's not like it's like this will be what we will do for the next 5-10 years. It's like every year let's do something different. So that's the lesson, but let's change the way we deliver the lesson.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can't help yourself but keep thinking about new ways to do it.
To be fair, I mean, you're also ideation, like we will
Yeah.
get bored lah.
No, I have to say because my ideation is very low.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
actually, every time I want to think out of the box, I will actually find Edmund for the thinking process. In fact, in this case, I will probably ask you, hey, so is there another creative way of parenting my kid? I will probably ask you. I'm sure you could give me like tips or even angles to do it in this case.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how I leverage on people who have high ideation. Cool. We really always want to get like advice, tips.
Yep.
So like our listener has 2 groups. There, one of them is actually the younger workforce, people who are younger generations. I definitely want you to share certain I don't know, advice or tips for them, and also for leaders, maybe in terms of how can
Working
they,
with the younger generation.
yeah, any tips for them, like for
Yeah.
both audience.
Yeah.
I think for the younger generation is like we need to know what we want because a lot of time we go with the flow, right, and we go make decisions based on influence
Okay.
by whether our friends or just yesterday I saw this NUS Whisper or SG Whispers or something, and this anonymous person was saying like, oh, my salary is about 4,000, but my peers are getting double that, and like why the disparity and all that. But I think first is knowing what you want and your benchmark of satisfaction, like I mean, in school it's all about grades. When we
Yeah.
start working, it's all about salary, right? It's always numbers, but we need to have our own satisfaction level. And then two is like what can we do to contribute? I think sometimes first knowing what we want is important, but knowing what we can give, what we can contribute is just as important, because that sort of defines our worth. When a leader, anyone sees us, even relationship wise, right? It's like, why should I be your partner? Why should I be your boss? Why should I be your employee? Like, what's your value besides all the tangible numbers? So I think as youths, right, they should know these two things: what their worth is and what they can give, what they can contribute. And then maybe for leaders, I guess, is to create space and time to have unconventional conversations, to really talk about things openly, to see how the culture or performance can shift so that everyone feels included, everyone wants to perform at the best level. Yeah.
Wow, really
Okay.
insightful.
Yeah.
Life
He
coach.
almost feels as if he's the host of the show.
So let me ask you,
But
I
very
really appreciate it.
yeah,
Really,
yeah,
really
resonate very strongly with all the advice. I think it's really good in this case. All right, cool.
Yep.
Thank you so much, Matthew.
you.
I think we've
Thank
come to
you.
the end of the podcast. And if you really like the content and the things that actually shared by Matthew and us, right, please like, subscribe, and share this
Yes.
content with anyone that actually resonates with it. All right. If not, we've come to the end of the podcast. Thank you so much, Matthew. We really
Thank
love the
you.
session, right? If not, thank you guys.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah. See you in the
Say
next episode.
Bye bye.
See ya.